Welcome to the Blue Jackets Trade Deadline Show. I'm Bob McElligott, along with Jody, Shelley. Dylan Tyrer is also along with us today. The trade deadline has just hit, and that means that everything should be in the National Hockey League. It's got to be into the office. Whether or not every trade has been announced, that's a different story, Jody, because we usually see some that trickle in a little bit after 3 o'clock. But busy day around the league for the Blue Jackets. It got busy after last night's win. And they make that one deal, and it looks like that's it for the Blue Jackets, but a pretty significant deal for them to add a scoring winger.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is a 3 p.m. deadline. The teams have to have their trade in the queue by now. So if it's in the queue, they just have to wait for it to be official, then it's announced. So we expect more to be announced here. But, yeah, that was surprising. Last night, just after midnight, the Blue Jackets made the trade for Connor Garland, forward from the Vancouver Canucks. Undersized guy, but I love the way he plays. He plays with a lot of compassion and energy. He's going to fit in on the top six, Bob, which is good. That's a line that we've talked a lot about with, there's been games where they haven't had that spark, and he's a playmaking, puck-hunting forward. So that's a great acquisition. And we had Don Waddell on last night, who we're going to talk to here throughout this hour when he has time. And he talked about making a bigger impact trade last night in the interview, and I think he had this trade was probably almost done by the time, when we had him on the air at the start of the second period. Got it done late last night, and I think it's a big boost to this locker room. This is a team that's done a tremendous job getting back in the picture. Dylan, how many points out of the playoffs are they right now?
The Columbus Blue Jackets are 1 point out of the
Well
playoffs.
done.
Jody.
Well done.
I'm over here. I'm ready for you.
You're ready. And so, they put themselves in that position, and that's when general managers go out and reward their team for their efforts, and that'll bring a lot of energy. He played with Zach Werenski in the World Championships last year, won a gold medal. He's an important piece of a lot of things that Vancouver Canucks have tried to do in the last 5 years, but here he comes to Columbus. He's excited. He's from the East Coast, so he knows Charlie Coyle. He's got some friends on the team. And I expect it to be now they've got a lot of depth up front.
Yeah, they do. And we're going to hear from Connor Garland coming up in just a bit. I had a chance to catch up with him as he was on his way to the airport so that he can make
Which
it here.
Which airport? Was he in Vancouver?
He was, at O'Hare. They flew in last night to Chicago.
Oh.
So he was in Chicago. That'll make it easy for him to get that short flight over here.
He should be off the flight by now.
Yeah. You'll hear his concern is how much he brought in his luggage.
Oh, that's not a concern.
No.
What do you need? A toothbrush? Maybe some change of underwear?
Yeah. And you can.
There's no suits anymore.
I've seen guys go on a road trip for 10 days with that. Not much more.
In the NHL?
Well, I don't know about the NHL.
But you don't have to wear a suit anymore. They've got team-issued tracksuits. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
He'll be playing tomorrow night, which would be great.
That's right. We'll hear from him coming up in just a bit. As Jody said, that's a good impact. Now, last night in the game against the Florida Panthers, a game the Blue Jackets win, and they had a lead. The lead looked like it got all the way away, but a goaltender interference challenge took one off the board, and then the Blue Jackets finished it off 4-2 last night. Mason Marchment left that game, though, and didn't come back in the third period, and that's something we haven't heard what the extent of that injury is. And that's one thing. It's great to get a Connor Garland and add him, but you want to be adding him when you have Mason Marchment available to play, too.
Yeah, Mason Marchment's fit in really well on that top line. Brings a lot of personality to every shift. I think he's a guy that gets under the skin of the opposition, and we'll ask Don the status of Mason Marchment when he comes in here. And, the way this team is rounding out now, they're bottom six, and I look at that Coyle line, it's such a luxury to have that. Those guys know their assignment every shift, and they're getting rewarded. Olivier now has 10 goals. Sillinger's doing great things around every shift. And Charlie Coyle's been a really bright spot. And great to see that this organization, this team, has put these guys in the position as UFAs, talking about Boone Jenner, Gabranson, and Coyle especially, to be a part of what's happening here the rest of the year and maybe be signed after the season. So, he didn't look that way a month and a half ago. And
2 weeks ago.
Now you're adding Connor Garland, which is exactly where they should be. This is where they thought they would be when they started the season. And, throughout all the injuries and people being missed, I think you learn a lot about your group. And I think Don Waddell has really seen, even with Werenski out here the past few games due to illness, you see what your team is in different areas. And he's got to be excited about what they've got going on here.
Yeah, it's not a great way to have to look at the team without having Zach Werenski, but it does tell you a lot, as you said, and you're watching other guys step up into bigger roles and have to do things they don't always have to do when Zach is part of the team. You were talking about how Connor Garland fits into this thing, and you mentioned where there has been a bit of a gap or a lull or whatever you want to call it is the second line, Sean Monahan's line.
Yeah.
Now, you can make the argument Charlie Coyle's the second line the way those guys have played. You can, but whatever line Sean Monahan's on, they want to get that line going. And they've really gone out of their way this week to try to do that. They put Boone Jenner up on the wing after he was playing fourth line center. Danton Heinen was on there. Kent Johnson comes back in the last couple of games and has played better. I guess if you look at it in a perfect world, you keep that Marchment, Fantilli, Marchenko line intact. And if you can put a Garland and Johnson and get production there on either side of Sean Monahan, who, by the way, is resurging himself. You can tell that he's in better health than he was earlier in the year. There's no question. I would imagine that's the idea. Now you've got Boone Jenner in that bottom six, which makes it so much stronger. And you have guys like him and Lundestrom who you can move all around when you need to.
Yeah, I thought about that right away. I thought maybe Kent Johnson would be off that wing and be Monahan and Jenner, but I think you're right. I think Garland goes on there with Kent Johnson and Sean Monahan. And, Garland's a right-handed shot, and Sean Monahan's a left-handed shot. So for him coming up the ice to see that forehand puck on the right-hand side, or forehand stick on the right-hand side, that's a natural fit now on those two wings. And Kent Johnson, Rick Bowness moving to the left side as a left-handed shot, which he's liked recently. So all these things are getting very technical, but they matter, especially when there's not much time and space out there on the ice in the National Hockey League. Some offensive wingers sometimes prefer to be like a left-handed shot on the right side. Marchenko switches it up. It's because they're in a shooting position when they attack the offensive blue line, and then the breakouts they can protect the puck a little easier. But I think it's better for the centermen at times to have that natural position there. And Garland is a guy that goes in and gets pucks, and he's quick. So I think that'll be good for Kent Johnson. I mean, Rick Bowness has to be thrilled here because he's got new pieces to play with. Where do they fit in? He'll find the right spot for them. And I still think Fantilli and Monahan are interchangeable. I like Fantilli's game, but I think he's the 21-year-old number one centerman in the National Hockey League. There's a lot to learn. And when you're in a playoff series, when you're playing down the stretch and other teams are focusing on that top line to shut them down, sometimes, as a young player, it's not the Fantilli's fault. It's just that Monahan has that calming presence and can slow it down a little bit more, and I think that can be effective as well. So a lot of tinkering can be done and interchanging with this group.
Jody, I have a question for you.
Hey, Dylan, I forgot you're over there.
Just got to remind you, right? We've got some stuff trickling in, by the way, I think we should get to at some point. But I want to ask you about the Blue Jackets power play. People have talked about Connor Garland being a right shot, being important for the Blue Jackets power play, particularly that second unit.
Yeah.
Why does that matter? Why does the handedness matter?
Because at the top, you've got left-handed players. So you've got Werenski at the top, and when he looks down in the offensive zone, if he's got a right-handed shot over here, he knows he can pass it for the one-time shot. So a right-handed shot's facing this way, the puck's coming here, it's a one-motion bang towards the net. They have enough left-handed shots to have those players to do that. Now, I like Severson there because he's got a really good shot. He's a big guy, he can skate, he's got a defensive mind, but when he's in that spot, he's been effective. So I wouldn't be quick to change that, but there has to be a place, maybe in the middle for Garland, because a right-handed shot in the middle, if you have Kent Johnson, the playmaker, and he's got a right-handed shot there, which you've seen Coyle at times play in front of the net, so he's open up like this as a right-hander. Kent Johnson's got that. So the guy in the half wall on the right side, who's Kent Johnson, he wants a righty in the middle, a righty at the top, because those are one-time plays, and it gets the puck to the net quicker, especially when it's a heavy shot. Because, shots get through. Guys know that are blocking shots. It hurts no matter what, but a guy that shoots around 95 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour, it stings a little more. And you notice with the goaltending, those quick, hard shots, it's not the save that kills the play, it's the rebound that comes off of them. And I look at Tampa, what they've done down there, and they've got a heavy shot from the point, and that really opens up some lanes for Kucherov and Point once that shot comes off the goalie.
What do you have over there?
Good question, Dylan.
Yeah, of course. I like learning about that type of stuff. Bobby McMahon going from the Toronto Maple Leafs to the Seattle Kraken. We've got Justin Falk, right shot D, going from St. Louis to Detroit. So the Red Wings loading up on the blue line. Saw a couple of other things just coming in. Ryan Strome going from Anaheim to Calgary, so Anaheim creating a little bit more space down their lineup, I think, there. But Bobby McMahon, I think that was a big name around this deadline. And Justin Falk, it took until the final minute, but he was a hot name early on that gets dealt here.
I was wondering, and I was going to say this to you a minute ago, I'd be interested to ask Don Waddell if he looked at defensemen and if there was anything he was trying to do there. Maybe with a right shot. Maybe, Dante Fabro didn't play last night. He's got some kind of an injury. Don't know how long that is going to affect the Blue Jackets. But, obviously they didn't get anything done there, so they'll work with what they have. But I'm just curious.
I like what they have on D. They've got 8 good defensemen here. And like we talked about, Werenski and Fabro out last night. You saw some good things from Zamula. I love the way Goodbranson stepped up.
Yep.
He stepped up in a massive way 2 games ago. Physical, no nonsense. And we got to remember, it takes a while. It takes a month at least to come back from injury and feel good about yourself and find your game. I think when you come back from injury, you want everything to happen right away. Feel good, make a pass, like all those little things. You kind of overthink and over-expect how you're going to impact the lineup. He's settled in as when you watch his shifts, they're simple. If there's a shot to take, he takes it, and it's hard. If it's a clearing attempt, it's hard. So I like how he settled in on that right side on the third pair, killing penalties as well. So he knows his value. Zamula does a good job. I like Christensen when he's in. He's keeping it much simpler. And I think that, he's got some bite to his game. He's got some heaviness to his game. So I don't mind this 8D. And you need at least 8 going in. I'm sure if there was something massive that he could have done to maybe upgrade a little bit. You know what I mean? Like a good veteran who's won a cup like Falk, which I think is great by Detroit, Dylan.
Yeah.
That's a good pickup to me. That's a guy who just comes in and plays the game, and he's a good pro. Those are great ads. So that's a good ad by them. And then Bobby McMahon from Toronto, he was playing on the top line with Austin Matthews. Marner gets traded or leaves last offseason. He actually got traded, then signed in Vegas. And that's a big hole. They're lacking a lot of offense. He's a good player, but I don't see him as a top-line guy, So he goes to Seattle, a team that's in that playoff picture. Yeah, that's a good pickup by Seattle. He's big. He's fast. He's got a good shot. You knew he was going to go somewhere. I wonder what they got back. I think they wanted something pretty decent for him.
They're getting a second-round pick in 2027 and a fourth-round pick in 2026. So it's not a massive return by any means.
And I was, the Garland, I thought Don did a really good job just giving up picks for Garland. You didn't have to remove anything off your team. He's got a 6-year contract.
Yeah, did you guys
extension.
talk about that at all? He's 6x6 that kicks in next year. So, assuming all goes well, he's going to be a Blue Jacket for a long time here.
Yeah. That's a good pickup for a player who has term.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to remove from your roster.
And those picks that he used to trade, those were picks that were acquired in other deals, right, Dylan?
I believe
one
so.
was for sure.
Yeah.
One was in the year check deal.
Yeah, the one was, I would need to go and look at how it all shakes out now because the Blue Jackets have multiple second-rounders, multiple third-rounders over the course of the next couple of seasons. But, you keep all of those picks, right? Like, those were extra picks that the Blue Jackets had when you look at how it shakes out. So I think he did good work to get Connor Garland. I've always kind of liked the player. I remember Paul Bissonnette on Spittin' Chicklets way back when, right when Biz joined Spittin' Chicklets. He was talking about this Connor Garland guy coming up in Phoenix. Yeah, it was a long time ago now. And he always said, keep your eye on this Connor Garland guy. And so I always kind of did. And, Connor Garland's name had been out there multiple times, right? Like contract disputes in Vancouver, things like that. And I was always wondering, maybe he's a Blue Jacket style player, right? Maybe a little bit undersized, but he has that fight, he has that skill, and lo and behold, here we are. Connor Garland's a Columbus Blue Jacket.
And he had to fight to save his career a few years into his professional his start in the NHL, because there was a lot of adversity. He was in Phoenix, didn't get a lot of time, didn't really have a role. So credit him for fighting to stay in the league. He's an undersized guy, like I said earlier. But he plays with a lot of bite, and I haven't seen him much because we only see Vancouver a few times a year, and we didn't see Phoenix a lot. I guess we did when we were in the West a little more, but he is noticeable every shift, and that's a credit to a guy that understands he's got to be extra strong in battles and on pucks, and he's a good playmaker as well.
All right, here's that. Mark Scheig tweeted out this trade tree earlier. I knew I saw it somewhere. When the Blue Jackets sent David Jiricek to the Wild, who, by the way, got traded again today, David Jiricek to the Flyers, and he'll go to the American Hockey League, by the way. The Blue Jackets used the first rounder that they got in that deal to draft Pyotr Andrianov, the goaltender they took last summer, who is in the future here. Not going to be 4 or 5 years until you see him in the National Hockey League, but he's in the future pipeline. The 2027 second-round pick they got went to Seattle to help get Mason Marchment.
No, that's right, yeah.
Back in December. And then the 2025 third that they got went to Vancouver to pick up Connor Garland. So, we'll talk to Don about this. He loves to trade. Loves to do it.
He loves to be in the mix.
And that's how you get assets, and then you turn those assets into immediate help.
It's a currency, right? The currency you pick up are those draft picks. You look at teams like Tampa, who've been pushing for Stanley Cups for such a long time. Toronto, they don't have those draft picks, those first-round picks, to make those, to use as a currency to make these acquisitions. So, yeah, I think that was really good. I thought that was. You want us to ask you a question?
No, I don't want to ask you a question. I'm just preparing for something that I'm going to say over here. You want to talk about it?
Go ahead.
Sure. All right. So what I was going to say is I think you guys should talk about a trade that directly affects the Blue Jackets, and one that I know that you like, Jody, in Brayden Schenn going to the New York Islanders. They just announced the return for this, but I'd like to remind everybody the Blue Jackets are 1 point out of the playoffs. They're behind the Boston Bruins. They're 3 points behind the New York Islanders after the Islanders got beat by the LA Kings last night. So Brayden Schenn going from St. Louis to the Island. The return, Jonathan Drouin, a guy that I know you're going to miss saying his name, Bob. You love saying his name during broadcast.
First-round pick.
And a 2026 first-round pick that belonged to the Colorado Avalanche, a third-round pick, and then another player. So that's a pretty big return for Brayden Schenn. Good work by Doug Armstrong and the St. Louis Blues. But you talked about it before we hopped on the air. You like Brayden Schenn and the fit with the New York Islanders. Why?
Well, he's won a Stanley Cup.
How many?
He's got 2?
He's
got 1.
I was going to say.
That's right. His brother has 2. Luke got traded again today.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll stay on your cue, number 1 over there.
I'm done.
But he's got character. He has intangibles. He's a guy who is kind of the fabric of a team, a locker room, understands all the situations that are going on within the team, and he plays hard. He'll fight. He'll play any way you want to play. He can play on the power play. I think the guys in the locker room in Long Island are going to like that boost of a captain coming in, but I think for Schenn as well, that environment for him, he's seen a championship in St. Louis. He's seen a locker room that was really in disarray, and now he's seeing a lot of pieces being moved. So this is refreshing for him. He's got a chance to, go impact that team. That, boy, if you would have thought the New York Islanders were going to be in this position coming into the season, there were unknown expectations. What were they going to be,
It's crazy to think about. It was going to be the Penguins in the basement of the Metro, the Islanders in the basement of the Metro, and now those are
the Devils were going to be
down. Right.
Top of the Metro. So it's upside down, but it's because of first overall pick, Schaefer comes in. Darsh makes some good, quiet moves with moving some pieces out, and then just really identifying what his team's going to be. And here he is adding, I think, that's a sneaky, really good pickup.
I hate it because it's going to make it harder for us to play against them. I don't like it.
I think we'll be fine.
All right.
I think we'll be fine.
Good.
And it's funny you were talking about what the predictions were for the standings coming into this. And remember last year, the Washington Capitals were the surprise in the Metropolitan Division, really, because they retooled on the fly, right? It looked like they were aging out and they were going to have problems, and they were able to turn it around, get rid of some of the older guys, get some young guys and move it in there, and they were very, very good. And even coming into today, they're only a couple of points out of a playoff spot, but they made some big moves, and they moved out some guys that were there for a long time. First, it was Nick Dowd, who had been there for 7 years and is a team favorite guy and a good, solid bottom six guy. They moved him to Vegas. And then overnight last night, John Carlson, who, when you think of the Washington Capitals, well, when I think of them, I think of 2 guys, Alex Ovechkin and John Carlson, because they've been together for so long. And Carlson's got the defenseman records in Washington that won't be touched for a long time, if ever. But he gets dealt in the middle of the night to the Anaheim Ducks. So, it's kind of, when you look at it on the surface, you're like, well, if you're only 5 points out of a playoff spot, why do something as drastic as that? That was my first thought. My second thought was, these guys just retooled on the fly.
Yeah.
I mean, they've acquired a lot of picks. If they don't make it this year, they have themselves set to really kind of turn it around come summertime.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like that locker room is gutted.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard from Karlsson yet, but I can't imagine how he felt to wake up and realize he's been traded. I'm not sure if he got the call from the GM or he found out another way. But my first thought was, why don't you wait until the morning to get the deal done? Let the player know, who's been such a great Washington Capital for such a long time, and then make the trade. But it sounded like it was urgent to get it done last night, and they got it done. And, yeah, that's hard to believe that he was even available, talked about. He did have a 10-team protected list that teams he couldn't go to or would have to agree to go to. But it sounds like he was maybe even unaware that he was even being talked about. So that's a shock to the locker room. They're going through a big transition. Ovechkin, this is his last year in the league. Last year of his contract. They're going to be a different-looking team next year. They realize, this is not just make the playoffs. I think it's win the Stanley Cup. That's what every team wants to do. So are they deep enough? Do they have the team? Are they in the spot? To me, I look at the East, and I think it's wide open this season. It's wide open to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. But they see otherwise, and I don't know if they've made any trades here that are coming after, but it really changes the dynamic when you're a team that's added and retooled, like you said. And I think they're a great example of what teams that have superstars, like the Toronto Maple Leafs, everyone talks about teardown. I think it's outside noise. I think when you have an Austin Matthews and William Nylander, you figure out what you're lacking this year and make some moves to and maybe get a couple young players in there and get back in the playoffs.
And that's what Pittsburgh's attempting to do right now on the fly with superstars to do that. Okay, so you talk about that trade of John Karlsson, not really the way you'd want it to go down, right? As you just said. Now let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum. Nick Foligno spends the last 3 years with the Chicago Blackhawks. He gets brought in basically to mentor Connor Bedard, help to turn him into a good NHL player through his leadership and example and all of those things. Nick Foligno, a lot of people were hoping Nick Foligno was going to come back to the Blue Jackets and maybe finish off his career. But he did get traded today, and it was not here to Columbus. He got traded to the Minnesota Wild, where for the first time in his career, he gets the opportunity to play with his brother Marcus. And that is a classy kind of trade. And watching shows today, I heard a lot of different pundits talking about the fact that players remember that. Players remember when an organization did right by a guy, and it just it says a lot.
Well, it says a lot about Nick Foligno because we know him personally here in Columbus with the Blue Jackets. It pays to be a good person. Every day, this guy is a great person and takes care of his teammates, takes care of his family, takes care of the people around him, has time for everyone. And I'm sure there's fans out there that can speak to that firsthand. Good for him, because being in Chicago, it's been tough there for Nick Foligno at times. He's dealt with injury. It's been, he understood that there was no chance to win a Stanley Cup. He went there, and I wouldn't say paid his dues. He made a mark on that organization that'll last a long time. And for him to get to go play with his brother, he's at that point in his career where you almost look at Nick and say, what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. And the two things he probably wanted to do was, A, return to Columbus where he has a house, he's going to retire here, his kids are going to go to school here when he's done retiring or done playing. Or the other one is play with his brother, and that's probably at the top of the list. He lost his mom a while ago now to the battle of cancer. It's something that him and Marcus carry heavy in their hearts. They're together now, and his comment was in an interview earlier today, I think my mom was looking down and had something to do with this. He's a very heartfelt guy. Family is first for him, and that's a huge thing for him and his sister, his brother, and his dad. So good on him. I hope he goes and gets to the Stanley Cup Finals this year.
Oh, and that's the thing. He's joining a team that has a legit chance.
Oh, big time.
Right?
That's the biggest trade that's happened this season, and maybe in a few seasons, is Quinn Hughes to the Minnesota Wild. That's a massive, massive trade. And from there, they've added other pieces. And the thing about Bill Guerin, who's just the GM of Team USA that won a gold medal there in the Olympics, he gets the intangibles within a locker room to a T because he was that guy.
Yeah.
He was the guy in Pittsburgh.
Still is that guy.
He is that guy. So He's a guy everyone loves, everyone pulls for, and this is one of those moves that who cares where he fits into the lineup, how much he's going to play, what his role is. That's an important piece for that dynamic of the locker room.
Dylan, you have any tidbits over there?
One more?
I'm doing some scrolling right now. There's nothing really new popping up. I heard Scott Laughton to the LA Kings, so another Toronto Maple Leafs deal. One that I was surprised that Toronto didn't make was Oliver Ekman-Larsson at this point in the season. Kind of a hot name there, a good depth defenseman, a guy who's obviously been there before with the Florida Panthers. So sounds like OEL is staying put. I thought that name would have been out there for sure. Yeah,
he's a good offensive defenseman, a guy who's researched his career, a guy who's won a Stanley Cup now with Florida, so he's got extra value. It's a fine line when you're looking at changing a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, but also what can you get back, And it seems like the prices, it was expensive 48 hours ago. It seems like the prices have come down, and I honestly think that there's a lot of teams waiting out there for teams like the Blue Jackets to see what they were going to do with Charlie Coyle and Mason Marchment and players like this. And these teams that are still close to the line or back in the race like the Blue Jackets, they're holding. Where you have a team like Washington we talked about is moving big pieces. So it's a very interesting landscape here. I thought there'd be more movement.
Something that you said earlier, too, I completely agree with. The East is wide open right now. I think anybody can go to the Cup final out of the East. One of those teams is, of course, the Carolina Hurricanes. They're probably the favorite in the East right now, but we know what Carolina's done in the playoffs the last few years. They've struggled to win that big series, right? They make one deal at this deadline. Nick Delorier, minor deal. He's a bruising forward, right? Known for the physicality, bottom six player. That's it for the Carolina Hurricanes. Does that surprise you at all?
It does a little bit. I think that, they picked up Ehlers in the offseason. He's done really well down there. They've dealt with injuries. The goaltending was always their issue, which, look at 60% of the league, goaltending is an issue. If there's a team that understands what they have to do, but more importantly, what exactly they are, it's the Carolina Hurricanes. You can wear them down in playoffs was the word on them because they play man on man. I think they're all in on what they obviously are, all in on how they're built and what they are. This is a team that's made a lot of big changes over the last few years, but they still have that great core of players and a really good coach. So Kochetkov, if he can hold down the fort for them, look what they're doing again in the regular season. They're well ahead of anyone in the Metropolitan Division. They're number one in the East. Tampa's right behind them. It's they don't scare me, is what I'm going to say. They don't scare me as far as when you look at the West and you look at Dallas. Colorado seems like they're on a mission here right from day one in training camp. Minnesota now is piling after a great start to the season or first three quarters. They're piling up. So, and when you look at teams that play against those teams, remember the trades that were kind of reactionary?
Yeah.
Like, they're loading up, so we're loading up. You know what I mean? We haven't seen a lot of that, it doesn't seem like here. LA's been busy. They picked up Panarin a couple weeks ago. It's a team that's trying to make improvements on the fly. They've changed their coach. But the most intriguing team in this whole league is the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers have been to the Stanley Cup Finals now and lost the past two seasons with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. They've picked up some depth. They like the pickup of Dickinson, three guys from Chicago. Dickinson, Doc, who's a big young prospect, good player, plays with bite, and then Columbus's own Connor Murphy, good right-handed shot defenseman. So is that enough? Because it's still the storyline there is goaltending, and one player I think they should have went all in on was Binnington, even though they picked up Jari.
And that's the question I was going to ask you next is, are you surprised that, Bobrovsky's name was out there a little bit. Binnington's name was for sure out there. No goaltenders go here. As you said, Edmonton got Jari. You can very honestly make the argument that they got rid of Stuart Skinner and they got Tristan Jari, and they got the same guy they traded away. because that's really what it's been, quite
Do you
frankly.
guys
little
feel
shorter.
like they almost regret not waiting to this point? Because it looks like, hey, maybe you could have gotten Jordan Binnington, but they got the deal done earlier in the year for Jari. It's like, man, we could have waited and got this guy that's proven to be, of course, hindsight is 2020 because now we think about Binnington. He's a big game goalie because of the Olympics and the Four Nations and all that. But, I mean, with that being said, there still could be some regret there, right?
I'm torn on that because I'm really impressed what Don Waddell did here, but the coaching move at the time he did. Coming off a win, going into a part of the season where, everyone had it sectioned to be, was it just before Christmas, right? That he made the change, the coaching change?
Right after.
Right after Christmas, yeah. Christmas seems like 2 years ago now, but
Jan 13, I believe, was Rick
you're right.
Bowness's
So,
first game.
so you make that move at that time when you could easily just say, let's get to the break and assess where we're at. I think good general managers understand exactly what's lacking with a group. And, you went to the finals the last 2 seasons with Skinner. Now you've got 3 goaltenders out there in the mix. It's not all goaltending. It's the way they play as well. Paul Coffey's back on the bench there with them as a defenseman coach. He's been there the past 2 seasons. He really helped them, guys like Ekholm. And to me, it's hard to get the engine revving at 9,000 RPMs when you've been to the finals twice. And I don't know what it's like to go to the finals and lose a Stanley Cup once, let alone twice to the same team and watch them celebrate and rub your nose in it. It's got to be so hard to wait because you have to go through the offseason, training camp, regular season before anything matters.
Well, these guys have said it enough here with the Blue Jackets, how bad a taste they have in their mouth after missing the playoffs last year. Imagine losing in the Cup back-to-back years.
Can't imagine it.
Yeah, and we talked about this yesterday before the game against the Panthers. There's a team that's won 2 Stanley Cups. They were there 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
Won 2 of 3 times. And now they've had a lot of injuries this year. They lose their captain before the season even begins. The Blue Jackets beat them last night. Essentially, their playoff hopes are pretty much, if they're not on life support, they're already dead.
Yeah.
So, but I saw what Sam Bennett said after the game, and it was like, hey, this team's going to be good for a long time. And if this is the blip on the radar screen and we get to get some energy back and not play as much hockey as we have in the last 3 years, that's okay.
That's 4 Nations Olympics mixed in as well. What they have, a dozen guys or representatives at both. So it's someone else's turn, And when I look at the Oilers, it is easy to be. We all have perfect vision in hindsight, right? Skinner got them there the last 2 seasons. You know what I mean? There's value in that. But the market got so hot. It was so much on him when everyone else wasn't ramped up. They got 7 new player forwards again this year, including Jack Roslovic, who's from this area. There's an adjustment period. So I don't know. Is Jari the guy that can handle the heat and get them all the way there? Maybe. Maybe there's a different mentality.
He wasn't in Pittsburgh. That's
when
all I
they
know.
lock it in and it's playoffs. And because when you're in a 7-game series, you are all in on what every tendency the opposition does for that series. I'd like to see them do well again. I think Connor McDavid will get a Stanley Cup. Steve. Someone reminded me the other day. Steve Yzerman didn't win his first cup until 14 years in the league. There was a lot of lean years of
Yeah, but
what's going to happen?
But there wasn't social media then. The pressure wasn't nearly as great.
There was newspaper articles.
I know, but you still didn't know what everybody
No, you're
behind
100%
the phone
right.
was saying about
right.
you every minute of the day.
Right.
Dylan,
You pay attention to that?
couple minor deals here.
Yeah, it looks like, I announced Scott Lawton to the LA Kings. Elliot Friedman just reported that. Lucas Reichel going from Vancouver to Boston. He was on the Blackhawks earlier this season. And then the Canucks also trading David Kampf to the Washington Capitals. So the Capitals kind of replacing Nick Dowd with Kampf.
So what are the Canucks doing? Quinn Hughes, JT Miller, they keep Pettersson. Garland is gone. Kampf, I know he was been in a few teams in different seasons.
They still
keep
have Hronek.
Bluger.
They still have DeBrusk. They keep Bluger.
Who was the first one you said? They got a goaltender.
You said Hronek. You
Yeah.
still have Hronek.
Philip
They still have
Hronek, the
DeBrusk.
defenseman. Still have Jacob DeBrusk. Still have Bluger. They've still got Thatcher Demko. They've still got Elias Pettersson.
They're going to change to the youth. Another one out of there is Sherwood.
Yep.
You know. So it's a time, I think, can they change it quickly? Pettersson has got to get back to an $11 million, 100-point guy. Is that going to happen? Probably not. But he's got to be somewhere around 80 points, and there's got to be a team play there. Hronek is a good player. It just seems like now, what are they going to fill in around this? It's going to be interesting to see.
Zeev Bouillon, they've got they got all those young guys from Minnesota.
Yeah.
They have a core there. There's the beginnings of a core there, but feels like Vancouver still has to do some things to, I don't know, create some excitement around their group going into next
tough market,
season.
too.
Yeah,
I was just going
seriously.
to ask you about that because everybody talks about how tough it is in Toronto, but it seems like Vancouver is just something different. It's almost merciless the way they go after players in Vancouver.
Yeah, it is. It's really surprising because it's such a great place.
Right.
Yeah,
Great place to visit, apparently.
John Gabriel Pajot also signing an extension with the Islanders, 3 by 4.85.
Matthew
So,
Darsh, busy.
seriously.
Good for him. What's the return on Lawton and McMahon? Did we figure that out yet for
So
Toronto?
I told you guys McMahon. That was going back. I think it was
second
something
and
like a second and a fifth, something like
Yeah.
that. Scott Lawton is a third-round draft pick, which I think that's some pretty good work by the LA Kings. Scott Lawton for a third.
Yeah.
Didn't Toronto pay? Did they trade? Did they trade a first for him a couple of years
I don't
ago, or
value
no?
picks enough, I
Let's
guess.
see.
You know what I mean? I got traded for a fifth or a sixth. I thought that was pretty good.
Were you ever asleep when you got traded, like John Carlson?
No, I was not asleep. I was just finished a game here, played against the Arizona Coyotes, rode down the elevator with Scott Housen, the general manager, like walked through the press box, rode the elevator, walked from the elevator all the way to the locker room, didn't say a word to me. And then we got inside the locker room, and he was like, "Hey, Jody, can you come this way?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I thought he was going to give me the old keep working hard speech.
Keep working hard somewhere else speech.
He sat me. He goes, "Take a seat." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, Scott
Those are-
Lawton last year, by the way, traded. He got a first-round pick for Philly, and
That's
now
right.
the Maple Leafs trade him for a third-round
Yep.
pick. So not tremendous business by
But
them.
he
there.
must have had term on his deal, right? He's
Yeah.
a UFA this year, so that changes it.
Yeah, and there were some other pieces in that deal.
Will he
but,
sign?
Yeah.
But anyways, he told me you traded you to San Jose, and I was like, "What?" So he gave me the phone number to Doug Wilson. I said bye to everybody, and within 5 minutes of him telling me that, I was no longer a Blue Jacket. It was incredible how quick it happens. You get the phone number, you call, they pick you up. It's like, and then when the door clicked on the back of this of the building, it hit me like I'm no longer allowed in this building unless I'm a visitor. So, but it's an eerie feeling. I can't imagine how John Carlson felt.
Yeah,
I mean, his
man.
phone must have been, missed call, missed call, missed call. Do you check social media first? Or someone else probably did and had to send you a bunch of texts.
Probably.
Imagine that wake up. You wake up, your phone's just completely blown up. You're like, what happened? And you're
no,
like,
thank
wait, I'm traded?
All right.
Now, they
Crazy.
did pick up Timothy Liljegren from the San Jose Sharks. The Capitals did. So they do get a defenseman. They get another defenseman that's a NHL veteran guy.
It'll
now.
be interesting to see how that room reacts on the ice tomorrow
Yeah.
night.
Well, yeah, because if you saw the things they were saying today,
Yeah.
Alex Ovechkin said it's the toughest day that he's had since he's been there. Tom Wilson talked about how difficult it is to lose a guy like John Carlson. I mean, those are your stars talking about that. And look, it's hard. It is a business, and everybody knows it's a business, and they'll say that. But the personal side of it hurts, especially if you didn't see it coming, and obviously none of them did.
Capitals
shocking.
Bruins tomorrow afternoon, by the way.
Oh, good.
Not great for the Blue Jackets
No,
there.
well,
If
it
you're
could
saying
be.
the
Well, it could be.
Capitals,
They
yeah,
might.
maybe if the Capitals are fired up, they're trying to prove something. 12:30 puck drop, so
Tom
we can watch
Wilson will
that
have
game.
take his frustration out on the ice. So it'll
Yeah,
be good,
sure. I'll
you
take
know?
that.
Although the Bruins just lost to a AHL Nashville Predators team last night, so they're probably pretty
They
fired
got
up too.
beat up by that team too.
Speaking of that, there's a team. How much has it been talked about? Nashville, there could be guys that are moving. There could be big-name guys. Steven Stamkos could be on the move. Jonathan Marchessault was a guy that was talked about. Apparently, none of them going anywhere.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised because Stamkos has 2 more years on his deal, I think.
Yeah, do you think maybe they just wait for the new GM to get in there and let him do all the business this offseason? Because, I mean, they got to do something there, right?
Yeah, I mean, Barry Trotz brought those guys in. It didn't work out last year. They got back in the mix this year. It was amazing to see how surprised they were that those two guys got traded during the game when they were here.
Yeah.
Like, those guys are really upset that they worked so hard to get in the playoff race, and then you're moving out some key pieces. And now they're out of it. But I'm surprised at Stamkos. Maybe the asking price was a little too high, but he also did come out and say he wanted to stay in Nashville.
Yeah. Tell you what, it is 3:40 right now. Don Waddell's going to come in here. His presser is scheduled for 4 o'clock. So before he gets in here, why don't we go ahead and do that interview with Connor Garland. I had a chance to catch up with him earlier today. He was leaving the hotel in Chicago on his way to the airport so that he could fly to Columbus and be here and skate with the Blue Jackets tomorrow morning. So let's hear from Connor Garland right now.
Might happen, and then kind of got to my hotel room and really didn't get confirmation until around 11 p.m. So I got a call from Columbus and Vancouver, and they had about 6 or 7 guys in the room at the time. So fortunately, got to say my goodbyes pretty quickly and move on.
I guess in some ways it's kind of nice that you were already on that road trip and you're in Chicago, so not a far distance to get to Columbus.
No, the travel's a lot easier, but I only have about 2 pairs of pants and 1 jacket, so we'll have to do some shopping, or somebody's going to have to help me out and send me some clothes from Vancouver, but we'll figure it out. What
was the whole lead up to the trade yesterday like for you? I mean, your name's been out there, it's bounced around. I don't know if it's been like that for you in previous years or not, but what was this personal journey for you like before it came to an end last night?
Yeah, I think there was, more rumors than, truth. And I think that's just part of playing in a city like Vancouver. There's usually always rumors, but, I think I don't know anything's real serious until I hear from my agent. And, really the first time I thought it was a possibility was about 5 p.m. yesterday when I got a call. So, and then I was kind of a little surprised, but I am very excited. I mean, to go be in a playoff race is what players, dream of. That's why you train in the summer. You want to play for the playoffs, you want to play for Stanley Cup. So, kind of very, very happy to be jumping into a situation like that.
You were drafted by the Arizona Coyotes, then traded by the Coyotes to the Vancouver Canucks. You've been in Vancouver for quite a while now. Is it a little bit disappointing to leave there, especially when you just signed a brand new contract in July that you thought would have you there for a long time?
No, I think that's just part of it. I mean, obviously they're going into a rebuild, and they're going to take some time before they're, a team that's competing for a playoff spot. And I feel like, I'm in the prime of my career. I'm 29 years old, and I feel like my game's getting better and better. And, you want to be able to play in playoffs. You want to play in big games. So that's, obviously I was okay with being there, and that was the situation I was in. That's, part of sports. You sign a contract, but, obviously getting traded is, to a good team is a huge bonus, and I'm very, very excited.
And you're coming to a team where you already have a couple of relationships, right?
Correct. Yeah, I played with Matthew Olivier in juniors. I played with Z this summer at the Worlds. We won goal together. He doesn't probably think about that goal as much anymore, but we kind of hit it off there. Became pretty tight. So I was very fortunate to meet him, and then Coyle, Charlie as well from Boston, and training with him, and kind of looking up to him as a younger guy. So we'll be cool to be able to play with him.
Yeah, you're a Massachusetts guy, and you get to come back and play in the States and get to be in a playoff race, as you said. I would imagine just all of that makes it really exciting for you right now.
It does. Being close to home, my sister, lives in Indiana, and we have a son and a daughter that will be born here in the next few weeks. So she will be out there quite a bit. She told me, she said it's not too far of a ride, so she looks forward to being more of an active aunt and closer, 2-hour flight from Boston instead of, kind of a full day in the airport and getting out to Vancouver with my parents. So, it works out. I mean, it's a blast, obviously, to be closer to my family at a time in my life where I'm having, 2 children.
Talking with Connor Garland, the newest member of the Blue Jackets. He was just traded here from the Vancouver Canucks. I always have people ask me, what's your favorite city to go to on the road? And I don't know if you evaluate like I do, but when I think of the cities in this league, I'm basically ranking them on the hotel that we stay in, the places to eat that are around the hotel that we stay in, and then the arena itself. You've come to Columbus many, many times with the two franchises you played for. What have been your impressions as a visitor coming to Columbus?
That's funny. I'm a big walker, and I enjoy coffee. That's kind of my drink of choice. I drink that about 4 times a day, and I think I always walk around the cities and try to find a good coffee shop to sit in. And Columbus has been one of my favorites for that. Last time I walked around to this market, I'm going to blank on the name, but just an indoor market, and just an easy city to walk around. You can kind of walk a far ways and still be downtown. So I've always enjoyed it. Always good restaurants, and again, it's close to home, so I always would have family in the city. So I always look forward to this trip, and I'll be able to live here. I had a former teammate who played for the Cleveland Monsters, Carter Camper, call me, and he was so excited for me, and just talking about the city and how great it is going to be to live here. So there's so much for me looking forward to, and but yeah, I always did enjoy my travels here.
I think you're talking about the North Market. It's close to the rink, so it would have been close to your hotel, and I'm sure you'll go there a lot more now that you're going to be here every day.
Correct. Yes, that is what it was called. I just can't remember the coffee shop. I know they had a bunch of restaurants and like lunch places in there. So I was thinking, I'm like, now I'll be living at the hotel. I'll be making frequent trips there.
Let me ask you, well, here's what I want you to tell the Blue Jackets fans, because being that you've been in the Western Conference, only get to see you play a couple of times a year, maybe one time a year, really, coming into Columbus. What can you tell the Blue Jackets fans about your game, what you're going to bring to this team and the way that you play?
Oh, it's a question. I think, they can be the judge and they'll see pretty quickly, but I just love to compete. I love to win. I play hard. I just enjoy being in the NHL, and I embrace it. And, I think that kind of, you see it in my play. So, I'm forever grateful to ever play one game in the NHL. I've gotten 500, and I just enjoy each and every game. I play it like it's my last. So, but to be on a team that's going to be competing for the playoffs here, coming down the stretch on a good team, a big team, hard to beat when it comes, in those later months of the season. I'm just really excited just to help them any way I can. And
you're not going to take any time in waiting. You're going to get right back into it tomorrow, right?
Correct. Yeah. I think I heard it the back-to-back. I'm getting caught up on their schedule, but excited to get some games in, and I didn't get to skate today, so looking forward to our morning skate.
Okay. Well, you may have to get some more clothes, because I'll tell you the schedule. You're at home tomorrow. You're at home for a 4:00 game on Monday, and then we'll leave right after and go to Tampa to play Tuesday, be in Sunrise, Florida on Thursday, and then in Philadelphia on Saturday. So you're going to go all over the East Coast.
Yes, but that's good. I always like to be on the East. I know it was a compact schedule, but everybody's got that this year, so not surprised to see it. But yeah, excited to get a bunch of games in here this first week.
Connor, thanks for taking a couple of minutes as you're on your way to Columbus. I really do appreciate it, and look forward to meeting you in person when you get here.
All right, thank you. Look forward to meeting you tomorrow. Appreciate it.
Welcome back to the Blue Jackets Trade Deadline Show. You just heard from Connor Garland, who was acquired by General Manager Don Waddell, who is with us right now. Got him after last night's game against the Florida Panthers. And Don, how long were you working on that throughout the day yesterday, or did it just come about right after the game?
No, it actually started the day before. We had certain things on our target list, to add up front for sure. And so we had, 4 or 5 names that were interesting. So we started on Wednesday, maybe Tuesday even, and just talking to some of the teams, just getting a feel for what they're looking for. And Wednesday it heated up, and then we got into Thursday, and we ruled a couple guys out for different reasons and targeted Connor as the guy that we wanted to get. So we went after him.
And you had said that if you got somebody, you preferred to get somebody with term. And you did get somebody with term with Connor Garland.
It was very clear that if we're going to give up assets, especially high assets, that we want cost certainty. And we want players that we like. And obviously, we wouldn't have traded for him if we didn't like Connor, and he's got a contract in the next 6 years. So to me, salaries in our league are continue to escalate, and getting some guys for term that you really like with the cost certainty is important.
What do you like about Connor Garland?
Well, he brings you a different dynamic of every time he's out there. We were watching lots of video of him here just recently, and first of all, he's coming a little bit slow this year on goals. I think their whole team is, the obviously there hasn't gone well for Vancouver this year, but 20 goals I think last year, 20 or 19 the year before. He could score, but he plays. He's a feisty guy. He's not the biggest guy, but he's very feisty, and he can win battles one-on-one, and he can steal pucks. He's got a real good stick. So we think that type of player is a good addition for our forward group.
What have you talked to the group? Is there a level of excitement with your team now?
I went through the locker room early this morning. The guys that were here, we had an optional day, so the guys I talked about were excited. I spent some time with Werenski. Z had played with them in the World Championships, and Z had told me that he's one of his favorite guys he's ever played with. A great team guy, but a great player, and that's always good to hear from one of your, your best players. So, because I went and sought him out, and I said, Z, are you going to give up the number 8 for him? Because he wears 8. And he said, and he said to me, money talks. You never know. If he's got enough money, maybe he could buy it from me. But so I think Connor's going to wear number 83.
Oh, okay. Where do you see him fitting in? I mean, the coach has his ideas, but where does the general manager see him fitting in?
Yeah, well, we talked about this morning, so we're kind of on the same page. You got right now, the Fantilli line with Marchment and Mason, and Mason looks like he's going to be okay.
Okay, good.
Which is good. We'll see tomorrow how he feels, but it's not anything that's going to keep him out long term. And then if you look at the next line with Monty, we think he can slot right in there with Monty on the right side and can move KJ or Boone to the left side. Those are things we talked about today. So that's where I see him playing. And I think, the exciting part for me was when I went down yesterday to talk to Rick about 4 o'clock, and I said, this is an option. I said, what do you know about Connie Garland? He said, get him. He can play. And, as we know, Rick's been around. Rick watches hockey. He knows hockey, and it's fun to talk to him because he knows all these players. A couple other guys that were kicking tires on we talked about. So when I mentioned Connor's name, he was excited about it. He said, yeah, if you can get him, he will help us.
Oh, that's exciting.
You talk about Mason Marchment, and when you were saying that it's been kind of a down year for Connor Garland when it comes to goals, Marchment was in that same situation when you got him from Seattle. Hasn't been a problem since he's gotten here.
No, exactly. I think he's still shooting some 35% or something like that. He came in for us at a great time for us to help us. We were going through a little bit of a down period there. We were winning some games, but we were losing some games, and I just felt that we needed that lift. And so he came in right there, as you guys know, on the West Coast trip there and gave us that immediate lift. And I can't say enough good things about him since we've had him.
When I talked to you right after the coaching change and mentioned the trade deadline, one of the things that you said was you would be watching to see how the team was playing. It wasn't about winning and losing. It was about how you were winning or how you were losing. And I was wondering, coming out of the break where you play 2 games well against Boston and the New York Islanders, but you don't get the result you're looking for, I was wondering how that may affect how you look at the trade deadline. I would imagine it helped to win in New York and then win again against Nashville.
Yeah, you're right. But even the loss to Boston, and then the loss to Boston was I really felt we were the better team. And, sometimes you're not going to win. The loss against the Islanders in overtime was more disappointing because we had the lead and gave it up. But I still felt that at that point, even though we hadn't played the games on Monday and Tuesday, that we were going to go all in and keep our guys and make a run for it. I know everybody talks about getting assets and things like that, but we're a team. And, I don't want to be in that situation where somebody thinks just because the year doesn't go well, we're going to get sold off and go here and there. There's something about, and I think last year was something that helped us because I said, we didn't make moves at the deadline other than adding a few guys. We kept all our free agents. But the one thing that I knew is 24 hours after we had lost that last game, and I was in the locker room, everybody was talking media, people outside were saying what a great year because of everything that happened. Those guys were truly disappointed in that room that they didn't get the job done and making the playoffs. And that stuck with me all summer. So I think this kind of group, these are special players. I mean, we all been around teams. Jody, you play for teams. There's some teams that are just bonded together, and this is a team that I'm very proud to be the general manager because they play for each other, and I love that.
We were talking about the Eastern Conference, Don, and we feel like it's wide open. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree. You got a couple of top teams, but
your former team is up there.
Yeah, I think everybody's beatable.
Yeah.
I don't think, you go to the West and it's a little different maybe. But in the East, you get in a 7-game series, best of 7 series. I think just any team in the East, you got to be in to win it. And if you can get in, I think Florida proved it 3 or 4 years ago where they got in the last seed and went to the finals. So I think this is one of those years that potentially could happen.
I want to ask you what it's like, because you mentioned when you sat down that there could be some trades coming in. How does that work? How does it work? So you have to have your trade call in by 3 p.m. or 2:59?
No, you have to have an email into the league, and the other team you're trading with has to okay it by 3 o'clock. The trade call will happen whenever because it's just a rotation, but going back when my first days, it was fax machines. You had a fax.
Yeah, I remember those.
And, yeah.
You still got one.
Yeah. And there's teams that they used to complain, I sent this in before 3, but my fax machine jammed and all that. There's been so many stories over the years.
It's gotta be stressful.
So now it's all email. You just got to make sure you email the league and the other team. The other team confirms it, and then you go in the queue for when the phone call happens.
Any more coming in, Dylan?
Nothing yet. I'm kind of looking right now, and there's not a whole lot trickling in, just the same stuff we were talking about. We do have a question from our fan chat for Don, though.
Okay.
People curious if you looked into adding anything on the Blue Jackets blue line around the trade deadline. Was that a conversation at all?
Yeah, it was. First of all, we were interested to see Fabro obviously didn't play last night, but we got the report today, and he's day-to-day, so he'll be fine. We talked about there wasn't a lot of defensemen out there. Like, if you look at the defensemen that moved around, there wasn't, Justin Falk was the highest one that moved, besides, yesterday Uyghur and a couple of those guys that we wouldn't be into. There wasn't a lot of defensemen moved. There's some depth guys moved, but we felt that our depth was good. So we talked about it, we kicked it around, but there was just nothing there that we felt that we needed to chase.
Were you busy and taking calls right till 3:45 when you walked in here?
About 2:30. Deadline was 3 o'clock, and we were in on one thing for a smaller deal until right around 2:30 or so, and we passed on it. And I would say, don't get caught up in the emotion because of the time clock.
Right.
It was something. It was small, but it would have cost us some money, and it would not have been a big factor for us here by any means. So we decided to pass on. So from about 2:30, 2:35, we were pretty quiet. We were telling stories, and we had Basil in there telling us jokes. So we were good. We were good.
Yeah, you can tell your experience is really. Those are all little things you would never think about from the outside. The stress of the timing. There's probably a lot of general managers in that position thinking they have to make moves
right
in different markets.
Yeah, no, the way our team was set up, and we wanted to make the move, and we were fortunate to be able to strike it earlier. But the other thing, we have a big conference room with all our scouts on the video and that. And then anytime I get a phone call from another GM, I take it out of that room. I take it in my office because I learned years ago, if I'm on my phone, every one of these guys are just watching me and they're listening to me. They don't hear the other side. They're listening to me. And so I always go out of the other room, and then as soon as I walk back in, the eyes come back on. You're like, okay, what just happened? So it's fun, to go through it. And the biggest thing is being prepared for it. And our scouts do a tremendous job. We were every player that came up today. There wasn't one player came up that somebody said we don't really know him. Every player that came, there's a lot of minor league guys, lots of different things thrown at you. That our scouts do a good job, and we were prepared for it. And that's what makes me feel good.
Last one for me is how many did you get a lot of surprising phone calls or anything that you don't have to share with us? But was there moments where you're like?
Yeah,
on your players.
Yeah, maybe one of our top young guys I got a call on, and I kind of blew it off pretty quickly because it just doesn't make any sense. We like our team, but we like our young players, and they're going to continue to grow with us. But to me, the two big moves we made here today, in the last little bit for trade deadline, obviously picking up Connor, and then the other trade line was hiring our coach, Rick. So makes me feel good.
That's good.
Last thing I want to ask you, Don, is there was a lot of talk on all the shows today about no movement clauses. And complaining. Now, I just want to know if this is the media complaining or if, as management, you have complaints too. There's all these no movement clauses, and it makes it tough to get deals done. We saw what happened with Parayko refusing to leave St. Louis and go to Buffalo, which is his right. I get it. From that standpoint, how do you see that from your position, trying to get deals done when so many players have those clauses?
Yeah, first of all, you can't blame anybody because we give them. You know, we don't have to give them, but in negotiations, especially UFAs, they want some protection. You know, they're making a commitment to you in that. I've been in only a few. I was fortunate not to have a lot of them to deal with over the years, but I've always gone to the player beforehand. That's just my style. We all manage differently and say, if an opportunity arises, would you be interested in going? And, you know, I've never had anybody turn me down yet. One person was a little concerned about where they were going, but I think you got to get on the front end of it instead of trying to. And again, I don't know what happened in St. Louis. Don't get me wrong. I don't know what happened there. But instead of making a trade and then going to the player and say, will you waive it to go there? My belief is if you're thinking about trading this guy, you should go to him before, say, are you open to being moved? That's my thinking.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Yes.
Put yourself in any business. That sounds right.
Yeah.
So, well, Don, thank you very much for taking some time for us. We appreciate it. And, hey, congratulations. Can't wait to see how this latest trade impacts this team the rest of the way.
Looking forward to each and every game, and thank you for having me.
Congratulations. Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Blue Jackets President of Hockey Operations and General Manager Don Waddell with us here on Trade Deadline Day. He's going to make his way into the media room, and we will have that. We'll go right to that media availability for you here in just a minute or so. But, you know, Jody, always nice to get that little look behind the curtain there and see what the thinking is and the procedure to go through a day like that.
Oh, he's tremendous with his insight, his time, his experience, you know. Just think about how long Don Waddell has been doing this. And he did mention yesterday when I talked to him that he had general managers call him and say, I need 10 minutes. I just think that the asking price for this player on my team is too high. And Don, you know, would tell him his opinion. And I think that's he's a great guy to have here with all this experience. And I like that he takes the conversation outside of the locker room because you're right, you don't know what's being said on the other side of the phone. So that was a fun show, and how lucky are we to have him? And he doesn't shut down any question. He just answers honestly.
No, he absolutely does. So for Jody, Shelley, I'm Bob McElligott. Dylan Tyer's with us. And before we go to Don Waddell, he's going to tell us one more time, how many points are we out of the playoffs?
1 point, people. Let's go.
Let's go. Right, here's Don Waddell.
3 o'clock. But for us, the planning goes in way before. We went in, you know, started weeks ago, but Monday talking about what we feel like we need for our team to take that next step. We didn't come around with a lot of things that we felt we needed, except we wanted to add a forward, someone that could score and help, you know, the top six, the top two lines. So we went in with that thinking as it progressed through Wednesday, Thursday. You know, we talked about a few players. As you know, there's some other players that were moved, and we had really focused on Connor, and we're able to continue those dialogues with Vancouver for multiple days, Wednesday, Thursday, and then finally got it to the finish line.
Yeah. And you may not agree with this, but you may not have the high-end, off-the-charts, 100-point type elite offensive talent. But do you feel like you've got the offensive depth now to sort of counter that, both regular season and in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think we've proven that. You know, you look at last night, even, you know, you got three lines. You know, the fourth line's going to chip in here and there, but we got three lines that can score goals. You know, I think last night, I don't remember, I think Olivier had a couple of them. That seems like so far long ago before I went to, I've been to bed for a day and a half. So, but, you know, adding another piece that can bring that to us was something we felt we needed, you know, to be able to have something that's, and the other thing, contracts in this league continue to escalate. And we're signing getting a player that's 29, soon to be 30. Cost certainty is important, you know, because as you go in, you know, it's free agency. Guys that are 33, 34 years old all want the same 5-6 year terms. And, you know, getting a guy at his age, knowing what the cost is, it was perfect for us.
I guess building off that, at the deadline, you usually see rentals move, just tons of them. You know, that they're almost all rentals. How rare is it to find a guy who has 6 years left, and were you surprised when that opportunity was made available?
Well, you look around this, they're in a situation, obviously they're going through a little transition there, and whether they're rebuilding or retooling, that's our famous words that we use now. They were looking to move some players out. And so, and I was pretty clear the last little bit that we're not in the rental market. I have 5 UFAs that are rentals. If we're going to use assets to trade for guys, we want to look for people that had term. And it was the same thing throughout the last couple of days. Anybody we talked about was all guys we had term. So, when we knew that Connor was going to be made available by Vancouver, we were pretty aggressive to get him.
You were able to go out and get Garland, and then within a couple hours before that, Marchment leaves the game. Have you learned anything about him today?
Yeah, I think we're all good. Both Fabro and Mason are day-to-day at this point. All his MRI and all of that came back negative today, and obviously it was something I was curious about how it was going to be. So I'm going to talk to our trainer around noon, and both guys are day-to-day. They could be in the lineup tomorrow or as soon as Monday. Yeah.
Were you close on any other deals, and do you believe this team right now, as constructed, can compete and win a Stanley Cup?
Yeah, taking that step to the Stanley Cup is a big, there's only one winner each year. So, just sit here and say we're a Stanley Cup team. There's steps to take there. Do I believe that we're heading that direction? Absolutely. Do I believe we can get in the playoffs and win some rounds with this hockey club? Yes. And, if you look at, again, I go back and look at the season as a whole, where, we were frustrated how we were losing games. And now, I think we've gone 27 of our last 32 points we've got, which is unbelievable that you go on that kind of run. But I never thought we were as bad as what our record was. I thought we were always better than what our record should have been. So when you talk about rental players, and at the deadline here, this is a great group of guys. We've been very fortunate here. We got 2 years in a row here. The guys that we added, Coyle and Woods and Lundstrom, they have fit in very, very well. These guys, they've done it. They've proven they can be a very good team. And, I always look at they deserve to have that opportunity to take it to the next level. I've never gotten caught up with the UFAs that you have to turn them all into assets. I just don't buy that. There's years if you're completely out of it, maybe it's a little different. But if we're competing as we've competed all year, to pull some kind of asset out of that locker room, it's done a pretty good job for us just to get something for 3, 4 years, 5 years down the road. That doesn't make sense to me.
Just to follow up to that, when did you know you weren't a seller, and what were your conversations like with your UFAs?
Yeah, well, before the Olympic break, I had a good feeling that we weren't going to be sellers the way we were playing. You were looking at playing. I had conversations with all our UFAs during the break. It came to the conclusion that it was March and not May and June. What you're asked for in March, it might be different in June. So I just felt that, and I thought it would really, and as I thought about it, I thought it would hurt the locker room if I signed one and not the rest, or signed 2 and not the other. So I just decided none of them were close. Let's just put it off, call all the agents and say we'll talk at the end of the year. Not going to talk during the year when the season's over. And I've said before, and I did it last year, I've done it for years. If a player wants to be here and we want him here, we'll find a way.
Just one more from me.
Sure.
Connor Garland's numbers have been down the last couple of years. How did that play into your thinking and the way you scouted and perceived this player?
Yeah, were they as down last year? I know this year they've been down, but you got to look at the situation also, which we've done. We've studied them hard. We've scouted them hard. We think in our environment with the players he's going to have that opportunity to play with, that he will come back to be that 20-goal scorer that he's been in the past.
You chose not to address the defense and the goaltending. What have they been able to show you in which you didn't have to address those?
Yeah, I first of all, we just won 3 games without our best player, in Renski, and that's pretty impressive. So that means other guys have stepped up and in those 3 games. Yes, we gave up 4 in New York, but I think we gave up 2 and 2 with Florida and the game before. So the goaltending and defense have done a good job. We've been comfortable with them, all year when we're, if we're healthy, which obviously it's always nice when you're going to get your best player back. We're comfortable, goaltending is it gets so put on the spotlight because as soon as a goal goes in that we don't like, it's always the goalie's fault. We forget about what happened 200 feet away from us or 100 feet down that caused that problem. So, and Rick's really stressed that, we've cut down over a goal a game against that, everything starts at the other team's end, and how we defend coming back is going to be the result. And I think we've all seen we've given up a lot less odd man rushes since Rick's taken over because of that reason. So, you got to give your goalies. I mean, they have to make some saves sometime. Let's face it, they got to make some saves, and they have been. But you got to give them the support, and we're doing a better job. So I just felt, Rick and I talked about it the last few days, very comfortable with what we had.
You mentioned your best player. Do you have a sense of when you might be able to expect him back on the ice?
Saw him today, talked to him about Garland, and fully expect he's going to come. He skated today for a minute, felt he's eating, so unless something goes sideways, I think he'll play tomorrow.
Don, it's an interesting situation for Garland where he committed to Vancouver last year with the extension. Then he gets traded before the extension kicks in. Have you talked to him just about where he's at with how his life has changed and what his next 6 years look like? And that no move does go with the contract, right?
Yeah, correct.
Right.
Yeah. So I haven't talked to him that much. It was 12:30 last night when I talked to him, and I don't know who was more excited on the phone. I was probably more wore out, so he was probably more excited. He was ecstatic. He's an American kid. He didn't committed to Vancouver, but he thought they were going in a different direction. So he's good friends with Z. He's friends with Charlie Coyle, being from Boston. So my conversation with him last night, the 10 minutes we spent was very positive, and he's excited about coming here. And I can't tell you about all the other things that happened. I think when he signed his contract, he was hoping that Vancouver was going to be a playoff team and going, and they decided to go in another direction. So,
with the 3 UFAs up front that you talked about, does that go into your thought at all when you're acquiring a guy like Garland who has 6 years on his contract in case you can't sign one of those guys for next year?
Yeah, 100%. And that goes back, I wasn't going to trade for another UFA forward and add another one to the mix. If we're going to trade for one, we wanted to have somebody with term. And, that was important to us because, free agency, you might be able to tweak and add a guy here or there, but you're not going to add 3 or 4 guys. It's just free agency creates more term and more money normally. So that was one of the big things when we went into the trade deadline to look at, and obviously Connor fits that bill well because he's going to be signed for 6 years.
Probably haven't had a chance to talk to a ton of guys yet, but maybe you've had some conversations as far as the room and being a seller, adding a piece, keeping this group together, showing faith in it, just what that will do for the room. And this time of year, you can have an impact on the room, whatever direction you go. How big is that for you?
Yeah, 100%. You can, as good as we're going, we could destroy that room with the wrong move. So, I'd let pretty much the UFAs know that they weren't going anywhere. I was up front with them and told them that at this point we're not going to move you along, and we're going to try to add to this group. So the mood in the room is critical, and Rick and I talked about it last night. We talked about it today, and he's ecstatic that we made the one move and we didn't move anybody out and we didn't clog up anymore. He said we have a great room. We got lots of depth at each position now, so I think the room's going to be fine.
And just with Garland, not the biggest guy, but the competitiveness he plays with and the style of play, he does that fit with what you're trying to build here as far as a style of player?
Yeah, we've added some size here. With Marchment coming in and obviously Ronnie, we have some size. So, but he doesn't play small either. He might be 5'10" or whatever by height, but he doesn't play that way. And I think the way he plays is more important to me than his height and size, because he gets in everybody's face, and we watch these battles, these one-on-one battles, and he wins these one-on-one battles against these 6'4" guys, and he's very strong for his, obviously he's very stocky and bulky, so I don't think the size would be any kind of factor at all.
I know you previously said that you were going to table any conversations about Rick till the end of the season. Have you at least started thinking about the possibility of bringing him back, just the way things have gone for you?
Nope. We made a deal, and we talked when we came back, and we both agreed that we were just going to stay with the same deal that we had, and not, it's what we just talked about a minute ago here. Things are going good. What happens if I get in a negotiation and it doesn't go well with him? So it's like one of my UFAs. He's a UFA, and when the season's over, we'll sit down and figure out the next steps.
Garland gets in tonight.
Yeah.
You expect he plays tomorrow?
Yeah, he's getting in at 5:10 and I believe 5:30, and he's going to come here, and Rick and I are going to meet with him and assume he's going to be ready to go tomorrow. He's going to play tonight in Chicago, so there's no reason why he can't play tomorrow. Yep.
I think you mentioned this right off the hop, but having Garland at 6 for 6, and then you compare that to all these contracts that are going to come up, that you're going to have to keep this thing together, especially with the young guys. Just how big was that? When you looked to your future planning.
Yeah, we do a 5-year plan out for because you got Fantilli coming up, you got Werenski in 2 years, you got Marchenko coming up, and knowing what the cost is, the cost certainly plays a big factor. And because now we know that 6 years, okay, we can pencil this number in at this position and go from there. So, I think you're always looking, this is a hockey team. We're trying to win hockey games, but it's a business, and we have to make sure it makes some sense, and we got to make sure we control. There's a cap and all that going forward. So we got to keep all those things in mind in every move you make. And certainly, though, in Connor's case, was a big factor that having that contract for 6 years.
Kind of talking about the cap, I'm just curious. We know some estimates of what it's going to go up pretty large. The ownership here has not ever really had a problem spending up to the cap in the past. I'm wondering if you've talked to them just about, if it goes up, are they willing to go up with it?
Yep, Mike Priest, the president, along with the McConnells, we've all talked about it. And if there's a player that's going to make this hockey club better, or players, and it's going to cost, they're all in. They want to win. They want to win. And we're very fortunate here. I always haven't been in this situation that you have such support from this ownership that, obviously they're a big part of this community. I'm very proud to be an owner of the Blue Jackets, but they want to win. So, no, we'll be able to do whatever we need to do to take that next step forward.
Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you, everybody.